This episode of Going in Raw is sponsored by Liquid IV. The holidays are nearly upon us, and with them comes travel and a marathon of family gatherings, so be sure to stay hydrated through it all with Liquid IV.
One stick of Liquid IV and 16 ounces of water hydrates better than water alone and gives you 8 vitamins and nutrients, plus 3 times the electrolytes of the leading sports drink, so you can stay hydrated amidst all the road trips, family get-togethers, and holiday parties.
So tear, pour, and live more and stay hydrated through the holidays with Liquid IV. Get 20% off your first order of Liquid IV when you go to liquidiv.com and use code RAW at checkout. That's 20% off your first order when you shop Better Hydration today using promo code RAW at liquidiv.com. Hey, friendo, Steve here.
Hey, Larson.
Welcome back to Going in Raw, the only pro wrestling podcast you need to be listening to. It's Wednesday. That means it's Hot Take Wednesday. We asked for your hot takes on the community thread at the Going in Raw channel, YouTube. And you can get your own hot take in if it's hot enough by hitting that subscribe button and the notify bell to make sure you know you're notified when our hot takes threads go up. Larson, what is the first searing hot take today?
Hot take. Tyler Lippingwell.
Okay, sure.
That's what this says.
Okay.
Hot take.
Hot take.
The War Games concept is so boring.
Wow.
The easy fix is to make it an elimination match. 80% of the match does not matter as there are 0 consequences. This is P.S. I'm from Vancouver. I'm going to War Games later this month. Lol.
Oh, is he going just to troll it, just to boo it?
Maybe
he's going to show up.
Huge sign says War Games sucks.
Yeah, War Games, no way is what
Yes.
he's gonna have a sign that says.
What do I like? Not War Games.
Not War Game. I came here for traditional 5-on-5 elimination, and all I got was this shitty War Games
Series action. So there's 2 things here.
2.
I think there's the mechanics of the match itself, and there's also the annual nature of it. You know, it's on the schedule every year. Survivor Series is now War Games, and it runs the risk, if it's not there already, of falling into the same kind of trap that Hell in a Cell was, where you kind of have to manufacture a feud that's worthy of being in War Games leading up to War Games, as opposed to it being a natural blow-off.
Sure.
That occurs because the feud is like so intense and there's so much heat behind it.
Demands War Games.
It demands something like War Games. Regarding the mechanics, there is the issue with the War Games match that I've always kind of had, and that's that the match doesn't actually start till about 60% of the way through it.
Yeah.
Imagine the urgency if you can win at any time. Advantage actually means something at that point, you know?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Like really means something, as opposed to, well, you just get to inflict more damage on your opponents. Well, before the match even starts, it's still 5-on-5.
I don't think mathematically the advantage has swung one way or another. I'm almost positive last time we did the math on it, it was roughly 50-50. If not, it was in favor of the disadvantaged team, in which case you got to ask yourself, who actually has the advantage here?
Yeah. I mean, the major thing, though, is when the match starts. As soon as the first 2 people are in there, that's when the match should start.
Mm-hmm.
And waiting to officially ring the bell. No pinfalls or whatever can happen until everybody's in the ring.
Yeah.
Well, it's like you're 40 minutes through. You're already exhausted watching it. And you're like, oh, wait, the match hasn't even started yet.
It's become kind of a running joke, especially like, you know, the times we watched it back when it was NXT. And it's been, what, 3? Is this the 4th year that it was the first year Triple H took over. So
third?
Triple H took over in 21? I think they did it that first year he took over in 21 because the Vince stuff was July. So, yeah, it was Survivor Series 21, I think, is when.
No, that could be then. That'd be the
I
fourth
think. 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't know. This might be its 4th year. It might be its 3rd year. I don't know. In any event, I think they've been. Here's the bottom line, though. If I recall,
Survivor Series 2021 did not have War Games.
Okay. So 22, 23, 24. Okay. The matches and the NXT matches, they've all been good. Like they last year, Triple H's focus on factions, I think, helps with the first point of It's not a natural blow off. It's just on the schedule. And I agree with that. I think that killed Hell in a Cell. I think this year with Punk and Drew, they sort of underlined why it matters to make it a big deal. And if it was my given preference, I'd probably put Brand versus Brand on the schedule. And we talked about that ages ago. Put Brand versus, and I know a lot of people don't like that, but put Brand versus Brand on the schedule. Some elimination matches, and some stakes involved somehow with Survivor Series. That being said, if the matches are good, I have a hard time, complaining too much about it. I agree 1,000% because I know it has become kind of a running joke on our live streams. Oh, the match is actually starting now. It would be great if there was a way to put stakes involved with that first, even if it's not necessarily, hey, whoever wins, to get everybody involved. Because here's the thing. The only problem with whoever wins, they ain't never going to do that.
Oh, I know.
And so if you know that going in, then that sort of also kills the drama a little bit. It becomes a foregone conclusion that nobody's actually going to win in that first 40 minutes. So then you do need to change something about the first 40 minutes. And I don't know what that is beyond, just adding some sort of stakes there as it pertains to the rest of the match.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is, but yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't say it's boring because I don't think any of the matches have been boring, but the concept is goofy.
Yeah, it's flawed to an extent. I mean, it hasn't interfered with, for the most part, the quality of the actual War Games bouts because they typically, go all out in terms of the intensity of the matches. But at the same time, whether it's, as Tyler put it here, make it an elimination match, where as soon as an opening bell, as soon as the first two people are in the ring and the opening bell hits, you could eliminate one of the members of the other team, but it doesn't mean the match is over.
Oh, I think that's actually a terrific concept. I think making an elimination adds a lot of dimension to it.
Or it's elimination until everybody's in, at which point then it's first fall to win.
Yeah, maybe.
Make it even more convoluted. Second paragraph for the rules.
You know what they honestly should do? You know what they should do, man? Make War Games a blow-off thing. Take it off the schedule. Make the Iron Survivor, give it its main roster call-up, Iron Survivor Series. Do that, because Iron Survivor is a terrific concept.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun.
It is. Trick Williams getting 4 pins in 30 seconds, something like that.
Yeah, that's exciting.
That's cool. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, some of these match stipulations, and granted, it's because we're well-versed in the tropes of said match stipulations. Whereas the Iron Survivor is relatively new, it seems like there's a lot of different ways they can approach to make that exciting and thrilling and such.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. You can combine them both. Iron Survivor Series War Games. Iron Games. I don't know. Anyway, let's move on to the next hot take.
Let's move on. This is Nate here says, Tony Khan has become the same kind of booker Vince was.
Wow. A wildly successful one? A one who transformed all of professional wrestling and made it mainstream? Or are we talking about Tony Khan has become 2019 Vince McMahon? I think that's the spirit of this question. So yeah. When I saw this question, something popped in my mind, and it was a bit from, I think, Wrestling Observer Radio, Wrestling Observer Live, where Brian Alvarez was saying how at some point Tony Khan was telling people backstage, I haven't seen any additional sourcing of this, so take it for what you will, that there's no more long-term booking. Everything is week to week. Now, there's a lot of ways you can interpret that. Was there long-term booking?
In AEW?
Yeah.
I mean, everything with Hangman, yeah, that's long-term booking. That's a long-term story.
Well, that's long-term character development. Oh, I'm sorry. You're talking about the original Hangman story.
Yes, the original Hangman story. Okay. From the birth of the promotion to when he won the title. That was a story involving Hangman Adam Page. Yes, there was character development amongst that story, but there was a story to be told. He said, I'm going to be the first champion, failed. Ultimately was the third.
Thought you were talking about more recent Hangman stuff. Yeah, okay. All right.
But I guess if the idea
Oh, man, speechless.
I'm just trying to formulate this.
Sure.
Now, I would imagine sorry, I would speculate that maybe Tony Khan's idea isn't I don't have things plotted. I know where I want to go. I have an endpoint. I don't have things plotted out to get to that endpoint in advance. Therefore, it's a week-to-week process to get to that endpoint. That would be my guess. Not so much because I'm just, especially the better part of this year, how things have played out on TV.
Yeah,
where it seems like there's an end goal. How they get there, maybe a little nebulous. Might be a bit circuitous how they get there. But it seems like they have a goal and they want to get to a story beat or a crescendo. And you could tell at points, well, they were heading this direction. They changed their mind going this direction instead, but they're still going to reach the same end point.
So, I think you're talking about Darby becoming world champion using the Mox World Order storyline to get there.
Yes.
That is a long-term goal. We have a thing in mind, Darby winning championship. It's not week to week. Who are we going to have be next champion? We don't know. Let's just book Darby really strong. But if we want to all of a sudden turn it into, Lance Archer, we'll do that. I think you're right about that. In which case, what are we even talking about? Because that is long-term booking. That's long-term.
It's a philosophy about Yeah, you have an endpoint in mind and maybe some ideas of how to get there, but nothing concrete. And week to week, you make those decisions. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, doesn't mean that there aren't you have to believe that Orange Cassidy losing to Mox in some sort of violent fashion and there being some sort of angle after that match to further disturb the AEW mid-carders that the Mox World Order is targeting, including Darby Allin. That's going to take place. That's a story beat. That's something that you have to know is planned. Mm-hmm. So, what are we talking about here? Are we talking about, I'm curious. There seems to be some pretty vital context missing there. I think if we
from
get
Brian Alvarez's quote. Yes, absolutely.
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
If we get back to, and here's the thing, for all we know, Tony Khan was back there attempting to meticulously plan out story beats, this, that, the other, and realized in wrestling that's really tough to do, especially with injuries and maybe to a lesser degree egos, but especially with injuries and crowd reaction, crowd reception. Did this story beat work the way I wanted it to? It didn't. Now I got to pivot somehow. So for all we know, he's tried it and it just didn't work for him. And so he's going to something that he feels works best for his product. The central question of, has Tony Khan turned into what Vince McMahon ended up being? I think people tend to forget just how bad it was under Vince McMahon towards the end when he seemed to be old, out of touch, seemingly distracted with all sorts of other stuff going on in his personal life. And it became where clearly he was booking, for example, rematches that he just had forgotten had happened. Oh, let's book this match. We did it last week. What? Did we? That seemed to be more the case as opposed to Tony Khan, who's trying stuff, understands what he's doing, and isn't dropping the ball because of his own lack of cognitive ability. He might not be, in some eyes, not terribly good at booking week-to-week wrestling, especially when he's got so many hours to program.
And 2 other jobs to do.
Right. That being said, I don't see much similarity between the current AEW product and the 2019 WWE product. And in fact, I think when you look at the current AEW product, it's not, much of it is not terribly compelling, but it's also not completely amateurish, because it was bizarre. From the Vince standpoint, back in 2019, you can't call it amateurish because he'd been doing it for a million years, but it seemed so ill put together. Mm-hmm. What is he like? You get confused week to week by why are they doing this? Why is this person acting this way? Why is their name changed all of a sudden? Why have there been sudden violent character shifts? Where it's obvious that the person in charge was just a mess up here. I don't get that from current AEW.
No.
I get I get something that is, and I wouldn't, it's subjective to think, oh, is it as bad? Is it better? It's certainly more steady.
Yeah.
And that's not even like a good or a bad, but it's like week to week things happen in an orderly fashion, in a fairly logical fashion. Sometimes if it's obvious he wants to pivot, maybe not so logical fashion. Yeah. But there is a hand at work that is invested in what he's doing at the very least. WWE in 2019, Vince McMahon was an absolute disaster. It was a mess, and week to week, it was really hard to watch.
Let's take a quick break here. Get a word from the sponsor of today's show, Liquid IV. Steve?
Yes?
This time of year can be quite the whirlwind.
Oh, yeah.
With holidays comes travel and family gatherings, and amidst all the craziness, it's easy to forget to take care of yourself.
Which is why, Larson, I always keep my Liquid IV on hand so I can stay hydrated through all the road trips, family dinners, or parties that the holiday season can bring. One stick of Liquid IV and 16 ounces of water hydrates you better than water alone and gives you 8 vitamins and nutrients, plus 3 times the electrolytes of the leading sports drink.
And not only is Liquid IV an essential part of the holiday season, it is a must for Steve and I when we play our semi-weekly basketball games. See, our hoop season, it never ends.
Oh, no.
Never ends. It goes on forever.
Game after game after game.
Yeah, it is a grind.
It is.
It is. And without Liquid IV, I don't know. If we can keep playing, if I can keep shooting deep threes right in your face, step back, half-court shots right in your face, twice a week, every week.
I don't know if I've seen so many Hail Marys go in the hoop with your game, Larson. So tear, pour, and live more and stay hydrated through the holidays with Liquid IV. Get 20% off your first order of Liquid IV when you go to liquidiv.com and use code RAW at checkout. That's 20% off your first order when you shop Better Hydration today using promo code RAW at liquidiv.com. Just
next hot take.
Shot after shot after shot in my face, and I'm helpless to do anything.
Call them Hail Marys. I say they're sound shots. We can agree to disagree.
I've seen you close your eyes on some of those shots.
Well, I'm just so confident. It's not out of hope. It's out of confidence. Next hot take.
Yeah.
Sizzling Papaya
Oh.
says Triple H is killing the Bloodline story by adding a 5th member to, I'm filling out the rest of the question here, 5th member for the War Games match.
Oh, yeah.
So I didn't intend for it to happen. I didn't want it to happen. Nonetheless, I know who the 5th members are.
Well, yeah.
Thanks, Twitter.
Yeah, dude, what have I been hey, come to Blue Sky, baby. The water's fine there, man.
There's no spoilers there?
I don't know. I haven't seen it.
What?
I haven't seen it. Can you text me who it is? Because now I want to know. I want my own Larson spoiler.
It makes sense. I mean, it makes sense in terms of the stories they're telling on TV, but doesn't make sense in terms of the larger Bloodline story, and that's a little more debatable, I suppose.
Okay. All right.
Gosh, I mean, I don't want to get into spoiler territory, so let's. I'm texting you the names right now. Let's talk about whether the match needs, in this instance, a 5th member on each team, or a 4-on-4 would be stronger for the Bloodline story. I'm not talking about bringing other stories into this. And from that perspective, I get who they chose as the 5th member of each team.
Mm-hmm.
But let's say for the sake of telling the Bloodline story, was a 5v5 War Games match necessary?
Right. You got this story where both teams are now trying to go outside their inner circle and recruit somebody else.
Simply because traditionally it's been at least on main roster, a 5-on-5 match. Wasn't always the case in NXT.
Yeah, dude, to me, I think this adds some intrigue. I saw the names. I'm not reacting to them. I liked that element added, and granted, it was a small moment. You got a backstage segment with OG Bloodline. I wish they would do the same thing. I know we got the parking lot with Seth and Solo and Jacob, but it ain't the same. especially a Jacob we saw on SmackDown on the Tron. I'm like, where's that guy backstage in segments with Solo and the other two guys? So them trying to recruit people, and look, if the basic premise is OG Bloodline's looking at the locker room as it stands, trying to bring somebody in, and Bad Bloodline is doing the same thing. That's the story that's been presented to us. Now, pre-spoiler, territory, is it possible for them to just whip up an Anoa'i or a Fatu or a Hikuleo or something? That's a possibility. And you could try to make a dramatic, a story out of that, or a dramatic new character out of that. I like that they're sticking to 5 versus 5. I think the idea of them trying to find their 5th member, both sides, I like that. I don't think that it's killing anything. I really don't. I think that no matter who it is, whether it's a new member of the family, whether it is one of the names that we mentioned when we were power ranking, whether it's an LA Knight, I think there's so much history with everybody that you can choose somebody that really adds to the dynamic, changes the dynamic, interrupts the dynamic. I think that's an interesting. I just think it's an interesting, and you're expanding potential future storylines as well by doing that.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think adding a 5th member that is not intimately involved in the story currently is necessarily a bad idea. Again, knowing who the 5th member is on each team, both of them make sense to a degree.
Sure.
And I understand people are very invested in this Bloodline story and want to see a Bloodline story play out.
Yeah.
And I think for the most part, that's what we're going to get.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean you can't simultaneously explore other dynamics potentially.
Yeah.
And it seems obvious that some people that had been speculated, that we'd speculated would be involved in the match, might be doing other things.
Well, it also adds credence to one of our, and I'll be really obtuse about this, to one of the potential long-term ramifications heading into Mania season, which I think is pretty goddamn intriguing if they want to go that direction.
Yeah. Yeah. So, intrigue is kind of the name of the game here. I mean, I have a pretty good sense of who I think is going to win the War Games match, and I think you do too, because it's going to set something up between Roman and Solo. I think we both think OG
Bloodline's going to win.
Yeah, they're going to win the War Games, and then we're going to get Roman Solo for the Ula Fala, and Roman's going to get the Ula Fala back. That's how it's going to play out.
Look, we ain't going to see a whole lot of what we just saw at Crown Royal. We're not going to see a lot of Roman Reigns getting pinned. That's going to be, here's my prediction for 2025. That's going to be the one time we see Roman Reigns gets pinned until he retires. I don't think he's going to get pinned a hell of a lot, man. They might do a Cody Roman clean.
You don't think there's a chance that if he faces The Rock, he takes the L?
Brother, I don't know, man. I don't know they're going to do. Here's the thing. I don't know they're going to do more than one match. And if they do one match,
then Roman should win. I know. But I don't know. It kind of seemed like Dwayne wanted to win that match, a couple years back, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, but I honestly think you're right. I think that was under the presupposition that
there would be another one to follow.
There'd be more matches.
I don't disagree with that.
Yeah. He wanted
so no, I don't necessarily think it's killing the Bloodline story. I think it's bringing elements in to hopefully enhance the drama between all the participants already, and maybe advance some other stories outside of the Bloodline saga.
What we really need, and I'm really kind of hoping that we get this on SmackDown, is Roman trying to recruit people. That sounds ridiculous. He sent out his 3 dudes. Hey, look. As much as Jay's like, hey, we're equals now, Oos. You don't treat us like that. Roman sent these 3 fools to go out and recruit. I want to see Roman recruiting.
I know.
Going locker to locker. Hey, Oos.
Everybody's like, nah, Roman, I don't like you.
He's like, does the Roman face. Yeah. Exactly. Like he's picking something out of his teeth with his tongue.
Yep.
All right, man. Let's move on to this one from Chris Draves, who says AEW will botch the Hurt Syndicate. I think in this case, botch means they will not be used effectively.
I guess it depends. A lot of it depends on how much input they have on their stories. It seemed like MVP had a lot of ideas about what he wanted to do with the Hurt business in WWE.
Yeah, sure.
That obviously never came to fruition. I mean, if you recall, they kind of just broke up randomly.
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
In WWE. So it's not like they were booked to their utmost potential there.
No, not at all.
And I think he just said in an interview that there's some stories that he wanted to tell in AEW with Bobby and Shelton and himself. And if this gives him the opportunity to see the vision he had for Hurt Business, now Hurt Syndicate and AEW, to do the things that they weren't able to do with WWE, I think that's promising because based on what we saw on WWE, they were really good together. And I think there's a potential for a lot of really great stuff to happen. Now, will it happen in AEW? I don't know. Hopefully they're afforded the opportunity to make a maximum impact and tell some interesting stories there.
I think that with AEW, you cannot give them the benefit of the doubt that they're ever going to stick the landing.
Yeah, obviously you can't. No.
If the Hurt Syndicate story is a long-term effort and Swerve and his people stick around, from what I understand, I've heard Will Washington is a creative hand in the Swerve stuff, as is, I think, Swerve himself. I think those guys know what they're doing when it comes to stories. And if they establish a good collaborative working relationship with MVP and Lashley, I think there's going to be some really good stuff. The other thing you need is Tony Khan to give that story the platform it deserves. I'll be honest with you. I think Swerve Lashley, the Hurt Syndicate story, should be presented as the A story. Mox is the champion. Part of me also thinks that like Swerve should have kept the title against Danielson. And then you get this Hurt Syndicate stuff. And I don't know what the motivation. MVP had a good line basically when he says, hey, your management dropped the ball. That's why you're not world champion. That's sort of the basic premise of this entire thing. Yeah. So you'd have to rework things from a motivation standpoint. But either Mox targets Swerve or you do the Lashley Swerve thing. But I think that the Hurt Syndicate's got more juice behind it than the Mox World Order stuff, especially now. You know, it's like, okay, we're just on the road to Darby being champion. I'm not feeling it. I'm not feeling it right now. And I think that Lashley and Swerve as the A story with the title involved somehow, some way, I think that could have been that would have been a better way to go. I really do.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. We talked extensively on one of the last couple of Dynamite recaps about Mox champion feuding with a lot of mid-card talent.
Yeah.
Rather than the Swerves, the Will Ospreys, the Okadas, the people who are already established as main eventers. We understand the story is Mox is trying to elevate the mid-carders up to main event talent. I get it. But in terms of, if you're not going to bring like really good story beats and really interesting developments to the story, and it's just like, hey, you're in the same place you were 5 years ago, be better, and then they're just better. There's just not a whole lot of twists and turns or intrigue and for the audience to get involved in the story itself. We might be invested in the characters because we like Daniel Garcia or we like Orange Cassidy or Darby Allin, whoever. And because we're invested in the characters, we want to see them succeed. But if there's not the story beats to actually get us invested in the story above and beyond the characters, well then, I don't know, it seems kind of shallow.
Yeah.
And that's the concern, is that it's literally Mox saying, hey, everybody be better. He beats a lot of people up. People witness that, decide I have to be better, and then they're just better.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
yeah. We need more twists and turns based on who these characters are.
I saw a nice tweet. No, I think it was actually a whatever you call it on Blue Sky.
Yeah, what do they call posts on Blue Sky?
Fuck if I know. I scroll that shit all day long. I have no idea what it's called. It's blown up in the last week for obvious reasons.
I imagine, yeah.
And so it's turned into I was like, this place is a wasteland. And then, man, and I kind of like the functionality of it too. Plus, you don't get a bunch of crazy ass ads on it. Anyways, I'm not here to promote Blue Sky, but I have one. It's Wrestle Juice. But I saw a cool take there. And it was this entire Mox World Order thing is to have Wheeler Yuta beat Mox. I was like, hey, no, I kind of like that. I think it's a cool idea.
Yeah. I mean, it's cool if it's not within the context of being a world title match.
Yeah, no. Oh, yeah, probably not. Anyways, let's move on.
Tyler
Warden.
Hot take.
He's got a Wyatt Sicks hot take. The Wyatt Sicks needs to do something special soon, or else they're going to have no momentum going into what's shaping up to be a very important WrestleMania. I like what they're doing right now with Karrion Kross. It is firmly in the mid card, and it seems firmly designed to get the Wyatt Sicks a decent win. But it's entertaining as hell because Kross is entertaining as hell. And I think this story so far, it's very early, elevates Kross's group and Miz. And I don't think it does much for the Wyatt Sicks beyond give us some really entertaining stuff, which is awesome, but it's not like they're in the upper card. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I wonder if that's intentional because you don't want to book yourself in a corner with Wyatt Sicks. So if they're booked immediately as this dominant force, that's like their goal shouldn't be championship necessarily anyways. You know,
right, yeah.
if this is all motivated by grief and families, being torn apart. Mm-hmm. And so that was kind of the general theme with the American Alpha storyline. But at the end of that, Chad Gable was no different. He did not learn anything from feuding with the Wyatt Sicks. He's effectively the same character now. We'll talk more about Chad Gable later, that he was before that feud started, which I think that's undermining the Wyatt Sicks more than anything else.
Yeah.
Now, if it's a situation where they're going out and finding people who have not lived up to their ideals and torn families apart, then there's got to be a message delivered to that person.
Yeah.
Chad Gable being the example.
Yeah.
He ripped apart American Alpha because of his own arrogance, his own hubris. But like I said, he learned nothing from it.
Yeah, they teased Miz learning something, but he didn't. He just doubled down on it. Yeah, I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see if they actually do change people in their wake. They had some interesting stuff going on at the beginning of the Wyatt Sicks stuff. They might be taking this is taking too long road, They might be taking the too scenic route for people to stay invested. But, the bottom line is they might be, Triple H might see them as depth faces that aren't going to get losses. They might get, like a couple minor losses, but Howdy's not going to lose anytime soon. So, and I don't know how that ends, or I don't know how it develops. Mm-hmm. I'd like to see it develop, though, because I thought that they had some, with the grief thing that we used to talk about, I thought there was some cool stuff there, and I feel like they're leaving that behind.
Kind of feels that way, yeah.
But,
it kind of feels like more they're focusing on people who have willfully, again, tore their families apart.
And hey, you know what? Maybe they feel that the grief element is too heavy, and people aren't coming to wrestling for all that. I think that'd be awesome.
No, I think the variety in storytelling that is afforded you going to a wrestling show is of great importance to me personally. And it's not something you get in a lot of narrative forms.
Yeah, absolutely. Choweezy says, with a hot take, says, before the Bloodline story, Ciampa versus Gargano held the title for the best storyline in WWE history. I will say this with a caveat. I agree. There is something to be said about a really good story with spectacle. And because it was an NXT sort of, underground-ish, if you will, I feel like the storytelling itself, all the plot beats and whatnot, I think that they were unmatched. But when you look at something like End of an Era and how that started, yes, it's not plot for plot as interesting or complex, but because of the enormity of it and the history of it, I could see that playing into it in terms of what you think is best. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I've always appreciated the Ciampa Gargano story because it tried to, in some respects, elevate wrestling storytelling, and that a crutch wasn't just a crutch. A knee brace wasn't just a knee brace. These things were imbued with meaning and used to advance the story just as much as, or the use of those things were used to advance the story just as much as the matches or the promo segments. Here, let's go to this next one because I think they kind of overlap. John and Alistair voice. John. Says Gargano Ciampa, if the zeitgeist is captured again, could easily main event a premium live event within next year. Here's the thing about Gargano Ciampa at NXT. The crowd was invested and familiar with their journey.
Yeah.
To such a degree that when Ciampa turned on Gargano, everybody felt like that knife was going in their back.
Right.
Because they had been invested on the ride of their story from day one in NXT.
Yeah.
It's hard, if not, I won't say impossible, but it's very difficult to recapture that on the main roster. And it's going to be hard. As great as their story was in NXT, I don't want to see a carbon copy, beat for beat reenactment on main roster to try to recapture that magic because we've been on that ride. We know how it goes. Yeah. We know there's potential magic there, but we've seen it.
It ain't
like you have to give us a different wrinkle on the whole thing.
It ain't 2018, 2019 anymore.
No.
Unless they really start mining in an intricate way their history to try to get them dramatically to where they could be to main event a premium live event. Boy, that's a tough task. And I think that might not be, I don't think that's something that WWE Creative would put the effort into it because that would be way too much effort for them to be able to do that. It's not going to be just a couple of video packages. You're going to need some like deep mining of character and like, how did they just get on the same page all of a sudden? Why are they just baby faces again coming out to this music? What's the deal with that? So, I like that they're teasing the thing right now, and maybe they will get to a solo feud that'll, really capture people's imaginations again, and then they can bust out some video packages. Boy, being at the head of a premium live event, that's a lot.
It is
a Bloodline Cody territory now, buddy.
Yeah,
and then,
I know.
And you still got Rhea out there, and you got a lot of other people.
You got Gunther, you got Punk. There's a lot. You got Seth. There's a lot of names. Bianca.
Yeah, dude.
There's a lot of names that are regularly main eventers that don't seem like they're going to be taking a step down to main event status anytime soon. And
they've all got history on the big stage.
Exactly. Yeah. And to elevate Ciampa Gargano to that level, I know the stuff in NXT was great. There's a lot of very specific reasons why it worked so well there as opposed to potentially on the main roster. I'm not to say they absolutely positively can't do it. It's going to take a massive investment for them to get a feud to that level.
They do that shit on Dynamite, though. They just have Excalibur talk of it, like really speed run their history.
I know when he does the voiceover, when he does the voiceover in his bedroom, and he's kind of sleepy.
Oh, the sleepy Excalibur voiceover kills me.
Yeah.
Oh, that makes me laugh so much. I love that.
I'm gonna shoehorn this one in from John O. Davies. Here it says Triple H has booked Gunther too strong. Now struggling to make his character feuds interesting. John specifies. I love Gunther, by the way.
Yeah, there was a couple of Gunther takes I noticed where people are saying, he's different. I preferred him on. And there was definitely an effort made that is ongoing to add dimension to Gunther's character where it seems like a lot of people don't feel like it was necessary. And I'm still kind of on the fence. I don't know what to think about this new Gunther as world champion. I appreciate the effort. And in fact, when he showed up last night, it was a good crowd this past Monday, on Raw, where he said, the only thing that matters is I'm still world champion. The crowd popped. The crowd still really appreciates Gunther the way they did as Intercontinental Champion. I just think they're trying to broaden him up a little bit so that, the main champion on Raw will be more appealing maybe to a more mass of people. Whether it's effective or not,
a situation where they need a more dynamic character so they can tell more dynamic stories with them.
I think that's a possibility too.
And I share the same reservations. I really enjoyed Gunther's work when he was Intercontinental Champion. And yeah, there was a very distinct pivot after he won the World Heavyweight Championship for him to talk a lot more crap. And whether that was a facade to cover up whatever insecurities are now kind of expressing themselves now.
Yeah.
As we saw in Raw this week after losing to Cody, I don't know. But it's interesting that kind of abruptly they've gone from someone who just destroyed everybody and was very matter-of-fact about it, to now somebody who alternates between trolling the hell out of people and now really having a bit of a crisis of confidence after taking an L to Cody. Well, guess what, Gunther? Everybody loses to Cody.
Yeah, bro. You got caught. It's all good. I do think in the end it's better to try than not. I do think it's better to try to expand the character than keep the character stagnant. So I'm down with what they're trying, and I honestly think that Triple H obviously is committed to Gunther.
Oh yeah,
he loves the dude. So I feel like he is going to continue to try this, and I think Triple H has been pretty effective when he puts his creative energies into something. I think the dude knows what he's doing. So yeah, I'm interested to see where they go with this iteration of Gunther. It is a little different. I mean, it's not what we're used to, but that's not always a bad thing.
No. The Spectrum here with the hot take. The only good long-term book in AEW isn't even in AEW. It's in Ring of Honor, and it's Athena's story with Billy Starks. Final Battle 2024 is clearly where Athena versus Billy Round 2 happens, and it has to be Billy's win.
I hope so, because then Athena will be on cable television.
I hope so.
Yeah. Like
everything. Full disclosure, I don't watch Ring of Honor.
Neither do I.
I watch clips on social media. Everything I see, what they're doing with Athena, and has been great. The backstage chemistry between her and Billy and Lexi Nair is fantastic. The ceremony where Lexi presented Athena with like the spinner Ring of Honor Women's title was great. Athena's been doing career best work in Ring of Honor. That's her show.
It is.
She is Ring of Honor in a lot of respects at this point. I know they've put the title on Chris Jericho to try to get a TV deal. If Athena is going to stay in Ring of Honor, market the show around her.
Yeah.
She is awesome.
Well, also market the show.
Well, that too. But anyway, if at Final Battle 2024 Hammerstein Ballroom, Athena versus Billy Starks, I honestly don't really care who. I've seen the sentiment on social media, and I agree. I don't care who Chris Jericho is facing at that show. Athena versus Billy Starks should main event.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because that's been the story in Ring of Honor for 2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a story that I wouldn't mind at some point going back and filling in the gaps for myself. But everything I've seen has been awesome. I
think they do recaps on their YouTube.
Okay, I'll have to check those out then.
Probably check them out there. Let's see. Any more hot... Oh, here we go. We'll end on this one. Uncharted Media says, Chad Gable has absolutely been forgotten about since he re-signed and has lost all of his momentum. If you're Chad Gable, are you happy you re-signed with WWE?
I mean, he probably got a lot of money.
He got a lot of money. Got his own faction. Got a high-profile feud at the Wyatt Sicks.
Like you said, Triple H, his mission seemingly with his roster is get as many people involved as possible. And while Chad Gable isn't necessarily involved in anything high profile now, he's involved. I know he wasn't on Raw this week. He's on Raw most weeks. They're feuding with the LWO right now, so a match between him and Rey Mysterio seems highly likely.
Once Raw goes to 3 hours, Chad Gable will main event a Raw sometime during 2025.
Oh, hot take from Steve. I'll say this, too. I know a lot of people were really into the idea of Chad Gable beating Gunther for the Intercontinental title.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it should have been him.
A lot of people really like Chad Gable. I didn't think at the time that was necessarily believable.
Or
likely. And
he beat him once, though. He beat him once.
By count out.
Yeah.
He never pinned him. Never made him tap out.
He trained the guy who beat him.
What's that?
He trained the guy who beat him.
But he wasn't the one that beat him. Nonetheless, I didn't feel like it was highly likely that Chad Gable was going to beat Gunther. Gunther was always going to break that record. Chad Gable is not going to be the person to end that reign. As much as I like Chad Gable and think he does really good work, my expectations were not to that level. He did have quite a bit of momentum there during the feud with Gunther. It's obviously not in the same kind of region now where it was then, but it's not to say they couldn't recapture that.
You know, dude, if you look up and down the card, when I watched Raw on Monday, man, I'll tell you what, up and down the card, I don't know if there was one segment. Was there any segment when we did our recap? We filmed this today. We filmed a recap today. We did the recap today. We're filming this afterwards.
Yeah, like a couple hours ago. Well, 3 hours ago.
Was there any segment where we were like, I could do without this? No, there wasn't. From the beginning of Raw to the end of Raw, I was into everything they were doing. I was like, oh, man, I love this New Day stuff. It's firmly in the middle of the card. That's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever
you
Gable
want interesting
shows up,
stories in the mid-card.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. When Gable shows up with his dudes, I love it. His match against Dragon Lee, I thought was phenomenal.
A lot of fun.
And if that's what they're going to give us with Chad Gable, dude, I'm on board. He's got to be on board. He's got direction. He's got a crew. If he was an AEW, he'd be wrestle guy who immediately ends up on as a Collision Cowboy, maybe even a Rampage guy. And I don't see it there. He's got a really great character in WWE. And when it goes to 3 hours, here's another hot take, another prediction. He'll be on every episode of Raw in 2025 when they go to 3 hours, which I think is the beginning of the year. So he'll be fine. He's in an entertaining act.